Success is one of those words that glitters like gold. It's plastered across social media, whispered in boardrooms, sold in glossy self-help books. But when you strip away the branding, the perfectly staged photos, the highlight reels of entrepreneurs flying private jets and sipping champagne, what really lies underneath? Steven Bartlett, an entrepreneur who rose from being a broke, insecure teenager to the youngest ever investor on Dragon's Den, sets out to answer that question. Not by boasting about his achievements, but by doing the opposite, tearing apart the myths, dissecting the hidden struggles, and offering a raw, unfiltered look into the psychology of success. His book, The Diary of a CEO, The 33 Laws of Business and Life, isn't just another playbook on entrepreneurship. It's a journey through the contradictions of ambition, how chasing greatness can destroy you if you're not careful, how failure teaches you more than winning ever could, and how the real battles are fought not in boardrooms, but inside the human mind. And that's what makes this book different. It's not about hacks or 10 easy steps. It's about confronting the uncomfortable truths we usually avoid. The kind of truths that make you stop, reflect, and, if you're brave enough, change the way you live. The first law: you must step into the arena. Bartlett begins with a story of insecurity. Growing up in Plymouth, he was a quiet, often lonely child. His father had left early, his family didn't have much, and the world constantly reminded him that he didn't belong. But what defined him wasn't what he lacked. It was the moment he decided to step into the arena. At 18, Stephen dropped out of university. Everyone told him it was a mistake. His teachers, his peers, his own inner critic. But he had this burning belief that the world outside the classroom was where real learning happened. If he stayed in that safe environment, he'd never discover what he was truly capable of. And so he left, with no money, no degree, no safety net, just a willingness to try. This moment sets the stage for one of the book's deepest lessons. You cannot succeed without risk. Not just financial risk, but the risk of being laughed at, misunderstood, even hated. Bartlett compares it to gladiators in Rome. The arena is terrifying, but the applause, the lessons, and the transformation only belong to those who dare to enter. It's easy to criticize from the sidelines. It's easy to plan, theorize, or wait until everything feels ready. But nothing extraordinary ever comes from waiting. The first law tells us, if you want to change your life, you must step into the arena, even when you're trembling. The myth of passion. Follow your passion. We've all heard it. Teachers, influencers, motivational speakers, they chant it like gospel. But Bartlett argues that this is one of the most dangerous lies in modern culture. Why? Because passion isn't something you magically wake up with. Passion is something you develop. When Steven first started his company, Social Chain, he didn't wake up every morning feeling deeply in love with marketing campaigns or social media strategies. He was just obsessed with solving problems, with pushing boundaries, with building something bigger than himself. Passion came later as a side effect of mastery. This flips the conventional wisdom upside down. Instead of waiting to feel passionate before starting, you start awkwardly, imperfectly, sometimes even unwillingly. And as you build skills, confidence, and results, that's when passion blooms. The lesson here is humbling. Don't chase passion, chase progress. The law of the ugly truth. Early in his career, Steven realized something most entrepreneurs try to hide. The truth is often ugly. We live in a world where social media filters out the grind, the sleepless nights, the depression that lurks behind success. But the ugly truth? If where growth happens. He recalls moments when his business almost collapsed, when he couldn't pay employees, when competitors outsmarted him, when investors rejected him. Those experiences cut deep, but they also sharpened him. This leads to one of the most powerful themes in the book. The truth will always liberate you. Pretending things are fine when they're not delaying growth. Acknowledging the ugly truth, no matter how painful, forces you to act. He ties this lesson not just to business, but to relationships, health, and even self-image. If you're unfit, stop telling yourself it's genetics. If you're unhappy, stop blaming circumstances. If your relationship is falling apart, stop pretending love is enough. Face the ugly truth and act. The trap of external validation. One of the most honest confessions Bartlett makes is how deeply insecure he was, even when success began to find him. When he finally had money, fame, recognition, he expected happiness to follow. But instead, he felt emptier. Why? Because he was addicted to external validation. The applause, the awards, the magazine covers. They felt good for a moment, but the high faded quickly. And when it faded, he was left with the same hollow feeling he had before. This is the trap that kills so many ambitious people. They chase success not to fulfill a purpose, but to fill a void. And no amount of external validation can ever fix what's broken internally. This becomes one of the book's recurring lessons. If you don't heal the inner wounds, success will only magnify the pain. The importance of stillness. For years, Steven ran at full speed, always chasing the next deal, the next milestone, the next breakthrough. But eventually, burnout hit. He realized that growth isn't just about acceleration, it's about stillness. Reflection. Pausing long enough to listen to yourself. One of the subtle yet profound messages in this book is that entrepreneurs often mistake busyness for progress. But some of the most important answers come not when you're grinding, but when you're silent. Stillness reveals whether you're climbing the right mountain, whether your success is aligned with your values, whether your sacrifices are worth it. And without stillness, you risk waking up at the top of a mountain you never wanted to climb in the first place. The law of compounding choices. Perhaps one of the simplest, yet most life-changing principles Bartlett shares is the law of compounding choices. Every small choice adds up. Skipping the gym today, checking your phone instead of reading, eating junk food instead of nourishing your body. It doesn't destroy you immediately. But compounded over months or years, it defines who you become. Conversely, small good choices rarely feel life-changing in the moment. But over time, they build unstoppable momentum. This law shifts the focus from big goals to tiny daily disciplines. It's not about making radical overnight transformations. It's about consistent, repeated actions that shape the trajectory of your entire life. Bartlett frames it beautifully. The person you become is the sum of your daily choices, compounded over time. The weight of leadership. As social change grew, Steven faced another hard truth. Leadership is lonely. Being a SO isn't glamorous. It means carrying burdens that nobody else sees. It means making decisions that keep you up at night, balancing between risking too much and not risking enough. It means disappointing people you care about for the sake of the bigger mission. The book doesn't romanticize leadership. Instead, it shows its heavy weight, but it also highlights its beauty, the chance to inspire, to build, to create a culture where people thrive. One of his key lessons is that leadership isn't about power. It's about responsibility. And the best leaders are those who are willing to bleed for the people they serve. Final reflections of Part 1. The opening chapters of the Diary of a CEO aren't just Steven Bartlett telling us about his life. They're a mirror reflecting our excuses, our insecurities, and our hidden fears. So far, we've learned that success starts by stepping into the arena, even when terrified. That passion is not discovered, it's developed. That the ugly truth, though painful, is the foundation for growth. That external validation is a trap, and true fulfillment comes from within. That stillness and reflection are as essential as ambition. That our lives are shaped not by grand gestures, but by small compounding choices. That leadership is both a burden and a gift, demanding responsibility over power. Each of these lessons doesn't just belong to entrepreneurs. They belong to anyone trying to build a meaningful life. And yet, this is just the beginning. As Bartlett dives deeper into the remaining laws, the book moves from external battles to the internal wars: identity, purpose, love, mortality, and the pursuit of something greater than success itself. Part 2. The loneliness of the climb. The further Bartlett climbed in business, the more he realized success has a dark twin: loneliness. At first, loneliness disguised itself as independence. He thought he didn't need anyone. He thought long nights alone in the office were simply the price of ambition. But as the company scaled, as employees relied on him, as headlines celebrated him, he often felt more isolated than ever. Why? Because people stop seeing you for who you are and start seeing you for what you've built. Some admire you, some envy you, some secretly want to see you fall. Few treat you as just another human being. And that's when it dawned on him. The climb to success is narrower the higher you go. The crowd thinks. The pressure builds. And unless you consciously nurture relationships that ground you, you risk standing at the top surrounded by achievements, but no one to share them with. This is one of the book's rawest lessons. Don't sacrifice connection on the altar of ambition. Because when the applause fades, relationships are what remain. The law of knowing when to quit. One of the hardest decisions Bartlett ever made was leaving Social Chain, the very company he had poured his soul into, the company that had made him famous, the company that was his identity. Most people imagine quitting as a weakness, but Bartlett reframes it. Sometimes quitting is the bravest, smartest thing you can do. He explains the danger of this sunk cost fallacy, the belief that because you've invested so much time, money, or energy into something, you must keep going even when it's destroying you. Walking away from Social Chain wasn't a failure. It was freedom. He had built it, proved himself, and now needed space to grow beyond it. The law here is simple but uncomfortable. Don't cling to something just because you started it. Cling only if it still serves your purpose, your health, and your growth. Quitting, in the right context, is not the end of the story. It's the start of a new one. The fallacy of more. For years, Steven thought happiness was on the other side of more. More money, more status, more followers, more business growth. And yet, each time he reached a milestone, happiness slipped just out of reach. It was like chasing a horizon. The closer he got, the further it moved. This phenomenon, he explains, is the hedonic treadmill. Humans quickly adapt to new levels of success, comfort, or luxury. The dream car you once fantasized about? After a few months, it's just another car. The massive house. Eventually, it feels normal. The followers, the fame, the recognition, they fade into background noise. This realization is brutal. If happiness depends on more, you will never arrive. So what's the alternative? Gratitude, presence, redefining success not by how much you acquire, but by how much peace you feel. Bartlett admits it took him years and a fair amount of internal suffering to grasp this. But once he did, the chase became less about accumulation and more about alignment. The law of curiosity. If there's one thing that propelled Bartlett forward more than raw ambition, it was curiosity. He describes curiosity as the engine of innovation. Not just asking what, but why and why not. Why not drop out of university? Why not start a company at 18 with no money? Why not use social media in ways no one had imagined? Curiosity dismantles rules. It questions assumptions. It sees opportunities where others see limits. But curiosity also requires humility. Because to be curious, you must first admit you don't know. And that admission, that childlike wonder, becomes a superpower in a world where most people pretend to have all the answers. The lesson? Stay endlessly curious. The moment you think you know enough is the moment growth dies. The weight of mental health. One of the bravest sections of the Diary of a CEO is when Steven opens up about his struggles with mental health. At the height of his career, when outsiders thought he had it all, inside, he was crumbling. Anxiety, depression, and emptiness stalked him in silence. This honesty cuts through the toxic narrative that success equals happiness. It doesn't. In fact, success often magnifies unhealed wounds. Mental health, he argues, must be treated as seriously as physical health. No one would call you weak for breaking a leg and needing crutches. So why do we shame people for needing therapy, medication, or time off to heal the mind? Steven's vulnerability here is one of the most important lessons. Your mental health is the foundation of everything. Neglect it, and all the money, success, and fame in the world will crumble to dust. The law of long-term thinking. In a modern world of instant gratification, where we expect likes, views, and validation within seconds. Long-term thinking is almost a superpower. Bartlett argues that true success doesn't come from explosive moments of genius, but from sustained vision over years, even decades. He compares business to planting trees. At first, growth is invisible. Roots spread underground where no one can see. Then, slowly, shoots emerge. Over time, the tree becomes unshakable. But only if you had the patience not to dig up the soil every week to check progress. This applies not only to business, but to health, relationships, and self-mastery. Short-term wins feel good, but only long-term vision changes your life. Steven reveals that whenever he made decisions based purely on short-term gains, whether chasing fast money or seeking quick validation, they backfired. But when he thought in decades, not days, the results compounded beyond imagination. The trap of comparison. One of the biggest thieves of joy, Bartlett insists, is comparison. Scrolling through Instagram, he'd see peers buying bigger houses, flashier cars, or celebrating milestones he hadn't yet achieved. And even though he was already successful, comparison made him feel small. This is the paradox. No matter how much you have, someone will always appear to have more. The antidote? Redefining your scoreboard. Stop measuring your worth by someone else's highlight reel. Instead, compare yourself only to who you were yesterday. This lesson feels simple, but it's quietly revolutionary. Because in a world drowning in comparison traps, choosing your own metrics is an act of rebellion. The law of pain as a teacher. Pain, Bartlett says, is life's greatest instructor. He recounts moments of heartbreak, rejection, failure, and betrayal. Each one hurt, but each one also carved a deeper wisdom into him. Pain forces reflection. Pain strips away illusions. Pain, if embraced rather than avoided, becomes a sculptor, shaping resilience, empathy, and strength. The key isn't to seek pain, but to respect it. To ask, what is this teaching me, instead of why me? This law reframes suffering as something sacred. It doesn't make it easier at the moment, but it makes it meaningful. Relationships, the hidden currency. As much as the book focuses on business and mindset, Bartlett repeatedly emphasizes one truth. Relationships are the ultimate currency. Money can vanish. Companies can collapse. Status can fade. But relationships, when nurtured with sincerity, are the foundation of a fulfilling life. He talks about friendships that sustained him through breakdowns, mentors who guided him when he was lost, and romantic partners who reflected truths he didn't want to face. Every success story, he reminds us, is really a story of relationships. Behind every breakthrough is a network of people, supporters, collaborators, believers. This law challenges the lone wolf myth of entrepreneurship. You can go fast alone, but you only go far together. The illusion of balance. Work-life balance is a phrase tossed around endlessly. But Bartlett dismantles it with honesty. Balance, at least in the traditional sense, doesn't exist. In seasons of growth, work will consume you. In seasons of healing, rest must dominate. In seasons of love, relationships may take priority. The key isn't balance, it's alignment. Are your sacrifices aligned with what you truly value? Are your choices aligned with the life you want to build? Chasing perfect balance creates guilt. Embracing alignment creates peace. Final reflections of Part 2. By this stage of the book, Bartlett has stripped away many illusions surrounding success. We've seen that. Loneliness often grows with achievement. Quitting can be a strength, not a weakness. The pursuit of more is endless and empty. Curiosity fuels breakthroughs. Mental health is the true foundation of everything. Long-term thinking trumps instant gratification. Comparison poisons joy. Pain, if embraced, is the best teacher. Relationships, not money, are the real wealth. Balance is a myth. Alignment is what matters. What makes these lessons powerful isn't that they're entirely new. It's that they're told from a place of lived experience, not abstract theory. Steven Bartlett lived these contradictions, broke under their weight, and rebuilt himself through their truths. And as the book moves forward, the laws dig even deeper. into identity, mortality, and the question of what it really means to live a life worth remembering. Part 3. The Law of Authenticity. For much of his early career, Bartlett played a role. The ambitious young CEO, the relentless hustler, the smooth-talking leader who had everything under control. It worked on the surface. Investors trusted him. Audiences admired him. Employees followed him. But behind a mask, he often felt like a fraud. The turning point came when he realized that the energy required to pretend was draining him faster than the energy required to simply be himself. Authenticity, he writes, isn't just about being real in a vague motivational sense. It's about alignment between your inner world and your outer actions. It's about telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, admitting mistakes, showing vulnerability, and refusing to mold yourself into what others expect. In a world obsessed with appearances, authenticity is rare, and therefore, it's powerful. The law here is simple. Authenticity scales better than pretending. The closer you are to your true self, the more sustainable your success becomes. The fear of death and the urgency of life. One of the most striking chapters is when Bartlett confronts mortality. For years, he avoided thinking about death. But then, moments of loss, friends passing away, stories of young lives cut short, forced him to face the truth. Life is painfully finite. This realization shifted everything. Suddenly, small annoyances lost their grip. Petty rivalries seemed meaningless, and opportunities, whether in love, creativity, or personal growth, became urgent. He reframes death not as a shadow to fear, but as a teacher whispering, "You don't have time to waste." This is one of the book's deepest emotional punches. When you truly accept death, you begin to truly live. The law of storytelling. Humans don't remember data, graphs, or statistics. We remember stories. Bartlett emphasizes that whether you're selling a product, inspiring a team, or leading a movement, your success depends on storytelling. Social Chain's most viral campaigns weren't about pushing ads. They were about telling stories people wanted to be part of. His podcast, The Diary of a CEO, grew not because it was polished, but because it told raw human stories people connected with. And even beyond business, our personal lives are guided by stories. The story you tell yourself about who you are, "I'm not good enough, I'm destined for greatness, I always fail," becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The law here is powerful. Change your story, and you change your life. The disease of busyness. Modern culture glorifies busyness. Full calendars, endless meetings, 5 a.m. wake-ups. These are worn as badges of honor. But Bartlett dismantles this illusion. Busyness is not the same as productivity. In fact, busyness often hides a lack of clarity. He recalls periods when he worked 18-hour days, constantly on, yet achieving little that truly mattered. It was a hamster wheel disguised as progress. The breakthrough came when he learned to ask, "What is the single most important thing I can do today that moves the needle?" By focusing on what truly mattered and eliminating the rest, he achieved more with less effort. The law is blunt. Busyness is a form of laziness, an avoidance of clear priorities. The law of adversity. Looking back, Bartlett realized that the hardest moments, the near bankruptcies, the rejections, the heartbreaks, were also the most transformative. He tells a story of a crushing investor rejection that almost made him quit. At the time, it felt like failure. But later, he saw it as a gift. It forced him to refine his vision, sharpen his resilience, and build something stronger. Adversity, he argues, is life's way of preparing you for bigger battles. Without it, success would make you fragile. With it, you become anti-fragile, someone who doesn't just survive chaos, but grows stronger because of it. This law flips the script. Don't just endure adversity, embrace it. It's the weight that builds muscle. The law of silence. One of the most counterintuitive laws is the importance of silence. In meetings, in negotiations, in arguments, most people rush to fill gaps with words. But Bartlett learned that silence often speaks louder. Silence creates space for truth to surface. Silence makes others reveal themselves. Silence demonstrates confidence. And beyond conversations, silence with yourself, through meditation, journaling, or just turning off distractions, reveals insights that noise drowns out. This law is both tactical and spiritual. Silence is power. The law of perspective. There's a famous story Bartlett shares about losing a major deal. At the time, it felt catastrophic, like the end of the world. But months later, with perspective, he saw it differently. The rejection freed him to pursue an opportunity 10 times bigger. Perspective, he explains, is the difference between despair and gratitude, between panic and patience, between giving up and pushing forward. When you zoom out, asking, will this matter in 5 years? Suddenly most crises shrink in size. This law reminds us that your pain is often real, but your perspective can transform it. The law of environment. We like to think we're fully in control of who we become. But Bartlett insists, environment shapes destiny more than willpower. If you surround yourself with negative, complacent people, you'll slowly adopt their habits. If you fill your days with noise, junk food, and toxic influences, your mind will rot the same way your body does. But if you intentionally design your environment, curating your circle, optimizing your space, controlling your inputs, you tilt the odds in your favor. It's not about being strong enough to resist bad influences. It's about being smart enough to avoid them. The law here is pragmatic. Don't fight your environment. Design it. The law of giving. One of the most beautiful lessons in the book is that true wealth comes not from what you take, but from what you give. Bartlett describes moments where generosity, whether to employees, friends, or strangers, came back to him in unexpected, multiplied ways. Not always financially, but in trust, loyalty, and fulfillment. The paradox is striking. People who chase wealth obsessively often end up unfulfilled. But people who give time, energy, knowledge, kindness, end up wealthier in every sense. The law of giving isn't just moral. It's strategic. Because in the long run, generosity builds networks, reputation, and peace of mind that money alone cannot buy. The law of self-awareness. The most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. Yet, most people barely know who they are. Bartlett admits that for years, he operated on autopilot. He chased what he thought he wanted, money, recognition, without stopping to ask if those desires were truly his or if they were borrowed from society. Through therapy, journaling, and reflection, he uncovered patterns, childhood insecurities driving adult ambition, unhealed wounds masquerading as goals. Self-awareness, he realized, is the foundation of growth. Because if you don't know who you are or why you do what you do, no amount of success will satisfy you. The law is both a warning and an invitation. Until you confront yourself, you'll keep running in circles. The law of enough. Perhaps the most profound law Bartlett shares is this: know when you have enough. In a capitalist world, enough feels like a trap. There's always more to chase, more to buy, more to prove. But this mindset guarantees perpetual dissatisfaction. Enough is a personal definition. It's not a number in a bank account. It's the point where you can say, I could stop now and still feel fulfilled. For Bartlett, redefining enough was liberating. It allowed him to step off the treadmill, slow down, and savor life. The law isn't anti-ambition. It's anti-slavery to ambition. It's about recognizing when the pursuit of more starts costing you peace, health, or love, and having the courage to stop. Final reflections of Part 3. By now, the picture of success painted in the Diary of a CEO is far from the Instagram version. It's raw, complex, and human. We've seen that. Authenticity is more sustainable than pretending. Mortality makes life urgent. Storytelling shapes reality. Busyness is often disguised avoidance. Adversity is a sculptor of strength. Silence is underrated power. Perspective transforms pain. The environment quietly determines destiny. Giving creates wealth beyond money. Self-awareness is the foundation of growth. Defining enough frees you from endless chasing. At its core, Part 3 of this journey shows us that the real battle of success isn't against the world, it's against the self, against illusions, distractions, fears, and false stories we carry within. And as the book moves toward its conclusion, Bartlett pushes even deeper. What is legacy? What is the meaning? What is the point of all this striving if not to leave something behind that outlives us? The law of purpose. Bartlett's journey makes one thing clear. Success without purpose is hollow. Early in his career, he chased fame and money blindly. Each milestone felt exciting for a moment, then hollow the next day. It wasn't until he began asking why he was building what he was building that meaning emerged. Purpose, he writes, isn't something you discover passively. It's forged through action, reflection, and courage. You test, fail, pivot, and iterate, not just in business, but in life itself, until your actions align with what truly matters. He recalls a turning point when social chain became about more than marketing. It became about telling stories, connecting people, and amplifying unheard voices. The company's success then carried emotional weight because it aligned with a greater mission. The law here is profound. Without purpose, even extraordinary achievements feel empty. The law of emotional mastery. Bartlett doesn't sugarcoat the emotional cost of being human in a high-pressure world. The CEO's diary is full of moments when his emotions threatened to overpower him. Fear before a major pitch, frustration with a failing campaign, grief over personal losses. He realized that emotional mastery is not suppression. It's not ignoring feelings or pretending everything is fine. It's about acknowledging emotions, understanding their source, and choosing how to act rather than react. One of the most vivid examples is the night a major investor pulled out unexpectedly. Every instinct screamed panic. But through reflection, deep breathing, and journaling, he turned anxiety into clarity and failure into opportunity. The takeaway is clear. Your emotions are not enemies. They are data. Master them, and they become your compass. The law of radical responsibility. Another recurring theme in Bartlett's diary is accountability, not just for successes, but for failures. Many people blame circumstances, luck, or other people for setbacks. Bartlett admits he did too, at times. But he discovered that taking full responsibility, even for things beyond your control, is liberating. By owning mistakes, you regain control. You stop being a victim of circumstance and start being an architect of outcomes. He recounts personal and professional missteps, failed campaigns, mismanaged teams, and poor decisions that cost him money and credibility. Each time, the choice to own the outcome, not deflect, became a turning point for growth. The law. Responsibility is power. The moment you stop blaming, you start building. The law of legacy. At the heart of Bartlett's reflections is a question few of us ask in our youth. What will remain when I'm gone? Early ambition focuses on money, status, and fame. But eventually, he realized these are fleeting. What matters is the impact you leave on people, the stories, the lessons, the lives you've touched. He shares moments when former employees or podcast listeners reached out, explaining how his words or mentorship changed their paths. Those letters and messages were more valuable than any business deal. Legacy, he concludes, is not built in boardrooms or bank accounts. It's built in the hearts and minds of others. The law here is existential. Strive to create something that outlives you, not just something that benefits you now. The law of resilience. Resilience is a recurring motif throughout the book, but in Part 4 it takes center stage. Bartlett defines resilience not as stoicism, but as flexibility under pressure. It's a capacity to bend without breaking, to adapt when life throws chaos, to rebuild after collapse. He recalls personal setbacks, friends who betrayed him, business deals that collapsed, and moments of self-doubt so intense he considered quitting everything. Resilience, he realized, is built through exposure to adversity, not avoidance. Each failure is a rehearsal for the next challenge. The secret, persistence tempered by reflection and growth. The law of influence. Influence is power, but Bartlett warns that it is only meaningful when wielded responsibly. Through his podcast, he reached thousands, millions even, shaping opinions and inspiring action. He could have exploited this for fame, attention, or profit. Instead, he chose to use influence to elevate others, share lessons from failure, and normalize vulnerability. He reflects that influence divorced from integrity is dangerous. Influence rooted in honesty, empathy, and authenticity is transformational. The law. Power is meaningless without responsibility. Influence without integrity is a curse. The law of gratitude. Even in the whirlwind of his career, Bartlett emphasizes gratitude as a stabilizing force. Gratitude is not just a morning ritual or a feel-good practice. It's a lens through which life can be reframed. He recalls moments of despair and exhaustion, when he could have focused solely on what was lacking. Instead, choosing to notice what he had, mentors, friends, family, opportunities, shifted his perspective, rekindled motivation, and nurtured contentment. Gratitude, he insists, compounds like interest in a bank account. It multiplies happiness, relationships, and resilience over time. The law of learning. Bartlett's diary is also a study in relentless learning. Every encounter, every failure, every conversation is an opportunity to expand understanding. He observes that many people plateau not because they lack talent, but because they stop learning. He describes reading voraciously, interviewing thought leaders, and seeking feedback, even from people who could criticize him harshly. These practices allowed him to evolve faster than competitors and remain agile in a volatile world. The law. The mind that stops learning stops growing. Growth is a lifelong pursuit. The law of self-compassion. Part 4 of the diary also delves into the softer, often overlooked aspect of success, kindness to self. Bartlett shares moments of guilt, shame, and regret over decisions he made or opportunities he missed. For years, he punished himself relentlessly. Self-compassion changed everything. By accepting his humanity, mistakes, and imperfections, he could focus on progress rather than self-flagellation. He reflects, true growth isn't perfection, it's persistence despite imperfection. The law of contribution. Finally, Bartlett returns to one of the book's most uplifting truths. The deeper purpose of success is contribution. He realized that wealth, influence, and skill are most fulfilling when used to make a positive difference, whether through mentorship, charity, storytelling, or innovation. Contribution becomes the lens through which every decision gains meaning. The question is no longer, how do I succeed? But how do I leave the world better than I found it? This is the ultimate law of the diary. Success is fleeting. Contribution is lasting. Final reflections of Part 4. By now, the diary has transformed from a story of entrepreneurial hustle into a roadmap for living deliberately. The central truths of Part 4 can be summarized as: purpose gives direction to ambition. Emotional mastery allows clarity under pressure. Radical responsibility is liberating. Legacy matters more than fame. Resilience is forged through adversity. Influence should be rooted in integrity. Gratitude compounds peace and motivation. Lifelong learning prevents stagnation. Self-compassion sustains growth. Contribution defines lasting success. At its core, Bartlett's message is universal. A life worth living isn't measured by money, recognition, or social media accolades. It's measured by how fully you step into your humanity, how courageously you confront your flaws, how deeply you connect, and how meaningfully you leave a mark. Part 5. The Law of Reflection. As Bartlett's journey unfolds, one lesson emerges repeatedly. Without reflection, experience is wasted. He recounts periods when he was moving too fast, chasing deals, chasing validation, chasing growth. Every victory felt fleeting because he never paused to internalize it. Every failure stung longer because he didn't analyze it. Reflection, he realized, is the bridge between experience and wisdom. Journaling, conversations, meditation, tools for deep introspection Allow lessons to crystallize and decisions to gain clarity. Bartlett emphasizes that reflection isn't passive. It's active, deliberate, and sometimes painful. You must confront uncomfortable truths about yourself, your habits, and your motivations. Only then can you course correct and grow sustainably. The law is simple but profound. If you don't reflect, you will repeat. If you reflect, you evolve. The law of fear. Fear is often framed as the enemy of success. Bartlett reframes it. Fear is a signal. He shares moments of paralyzing fear, pitching to high-profile investors, speaking to thousands on stage, or confronting personal failures. At first, fear felt like a blockade, but over time, he realized it was a compass pointing him to what mattered most. Fear, he teaches, isn't to be eliminated. It's to be understood and respected. Acting despite fear, not because it's gone, is what builds courage. This law is liberating. Fear is inevitable, but it does not define your limits. Your actions do. The law of alignment. Part 5 emphasizes the harmony between values, goals, and actions. Bartlett observes that many people fail not because they lack talent, but because their pursuits are misaligned with their true selves. When ambition clashes with values, wealth pursued at the cost of health, fame pursued at the cost of relationships, the result is inner conflict. Stress, dissatisfaction, and burnout follow. Alignment, he explains, is about asking brutally honest questions. Does this choice reflect my values? Does this path serve my deeper purpose? Will I be proud of this decision years from now? When choices align with values, success feels natural and sustainable. When they don't, even triumph tastes hollow. The law. Alignment transforms effort into fulfillment. The law of influence redux. Bartlett closes the diary with one recurring truth. Influence is the ultimate measure of success, not wealth, not accolades, not social media followers. The question isn't how much can I take, but how much can I give? He recounts how his podcast amplified not his voice, but the voices of others, entrepreneurs, thinkers, and creators who might have otherwise gone unheard. Influence, used with integrity, multiplies impact exponentially. It's the legacy that extends beyond your lifetime. The law of time. Perhaps the most humbling truth Bartlett shares is the scarcity of time. Time is not renewable, and every moment spent chasing illusions or external validation is a moment lost forever. He contrasts the endless hustle of early adulthood with the clarity he gained later. Life is measured in experiences, connection, and contribution. The law is urgent. Prioritize time over things, people over status, impact over appearances. The ultimate law, meaning over metrics. The final reflection ties every law together. Bartlett observes that modern society measures success through metrics, followers, income, awards, or titles. But true fulfillment comes from meaning. Metrics may capture achievement, but they cannot measure purpose, growth, resilience, or love. He writes that the ultimate goal of life isn't to accumulate. It's to grow, connect, and leave a positive mark. Metrics without meaning are hollow. Meaning without metrics can still create profound impact. The law. Measure your life by what matters, not by what can be counted. Final reflections. Life lessons from the diary of a CEO. By the end of the book, Bartlett has crafted more than a guide to business. He has created a guide to living deliberately. Step into the arena, even when afraid. Develop passion through mastery, not by waiting for it. Confront the ugly truths of life. Reject external validation as a source of self-worth. Embrace stillness and reflection. Make consistent, compounding choices. Lead with responsibility, not power. Accept mortality to find urgency. Use adversity as a teacher. Value relationships over status. Prioritize alignment over superficial balance. Seek contribution over accumulation. Master your emotions and act despite fear. Curate your environment deliberately. Practice gratitude, self-compassion, and lifelong learning. Focus on legacy, purpose, and meaning over metrics. The diary is a roadmap for anyone striving for more than success, striving for a life that feels whole, authentic, and purposeful. Bartlett's genius lies not just in his achievements, but in his courage to expose his vulnerabilities, reflect on mistakes, and distill wisdom in ways anyone can apply. Ultimately, the Diary of a CEO teaches us that a meaningful life isn't built on accolades. It's built on courage, connection, reflection, and the relentless pursuit of what truly matters.